At Thanksgiving, my sister discovered I had $12 million. Then my family turned on me. I need to tell someone this story before it eats me alive. They say money changes people, but that's not quite right. Money doesn't change people, it reveals who they've always been. And last Thanksgiving, when my sister discovered I had $12 million, my entire family revealed themselves in ways I'm still processing. But before I dive into that disaster of a holiday dinner, I need you to understand something. I wasn't supposed to be the successful one. In the grand narrative of the Morrison family, I was meant to be the supporting character in my sister Emma's spotlight, the forgotten one, the backup plan, the one who was perpetually fine on her own. And honestly, being invisible turned out to be the greatest gift they ever gave me. Let me take you back to where this all started, because you can't understand the explosion without first understanding the fuse that had been burning for 30 years. I was 8 years old when my life changed forever. Up until that point, I'd been an only child in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, not spoiled but seen. Mom would help with my homework at our kitchen table that always smelled faintly of lemon pledge. Dad would take me to Hawkeye games on Saturdays, and we'd eat hot dogs and scream ourselves hoarse. We weren't the perfect American family, but we were solid, normal, together. Then came that night in February when everything shifted. I remember waking up to Aunt Patricia's worried face at 2 a.m., telling me to pack my favorite stuffed animals because Mommy was at the hospital. My sister Emma was coming early, way too early. 8 weeks too early, to be exact. The next few months were a blur of hospital waiting rooms that smelled like antiseptic and fear. Emma was so tiny, like one of those baby dolls I had, except she was covered in wires and tubes, and machines beeped constantly around her incubator. I wasn't allowed to touch her. I wasn't even allowed to get too close. The NICU nurse explained that germs could hurt her, that her immune system wasn't ready for the world yet. That was the first time I felt it, that invisible wall sliding up between me and my family. When they finally brought Emma home after 3 months in the NICU, our house transformed into something unrecognizable. Mom became obsessed with sterilization. I'm talking hospital-grade disinfectant on every surface, air purifiers in every room, and a mud room converted into a decontamination chamber. To this day, the smell of bleach makes my stomach turn. But here's what really messed me up. Whenever I showed even the slightest sign of being sick, a sniffle, a cough, even seasonal allergies, I was immediately shipped off to Grandma Rose's house across town. No discussion, no negotiation, just Sophie, pack your bag, Grandma's on her way. At first, I thought it was an adventure. Grandma Rose made the best snickerdoodles in Iowa, and she had this incredible collection of vintage jewelry that she'd let me play with for hours. She'd tell me stories about each piece, where she got it, who wore it, what dance or dinner it had attended. Those stories planted seeds I wouldn't recognize until years later. But kids aren't stupid. By the time I was 10, I understood what was really happening. I wasn't being sent on fun sleepovers with Grandma. I was being quarantined. I was a threat. My very existence could hurt the family's precious, fragile Emma. Oh, by the way, quick pause here. If you're watching this from Iowa or anywhere in the Midwest, drop a comment and let me know. I'm curious if this kind of family dynamic sounds familiar to anyone else, or if mine was uniquely dysfunctional. Anyway, back to being the family hazard. I tried everything to get their attention in positive ways, and I mean everything. I got straight A's. Mom barely glanced at my report card because Emma had a slight fever that day. I won the fifth grade science fair with a project about renewable energy that I'd worked on for 3 months. Dad missed it because Emma had a dance recital. And by dance recital, I mean she wore a tutu and basically stood on stage for 5 minutes, doing nothing while parents filmed like she was performing at Lincoln Center. The real knife to the heart came when I was 13. I'd been teaching myself piano on the old upright in our basement, the one Mom got at an estate sale and promptly forgot about. For 6 months, I practiced The Rose by Bette Midler because Mom mentioned once that it was her favorite song. I was going to perform it at the spring talent show. I practiced until my fingers knew every note by muscle memory. The night of the talent show, Emma had a stomachache, not the flu, not appendicitis, a stomachache from eating too much candy at her friend's house. Guess who sat in that auditorium alone, scanning the crowd for parents who never showed up? Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, when Emma played Hot Cross Buns on her recorder, and I used the word played generously, the entire extended family showed up. Both sets of grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, twice removed. Mom filmed it on 3 different devices to make sure she captured the moment from every angle. By the time I hit high school, Emma had perfected the art of weaponizing her delicate constitution. Headache? Day off school? Stressed about a test? Mom would call the teacher and get an extension. Didn't want to do her chores? Sophie, your sister isn't feeling well. Can you just handle it? And here's the thing that still makes me laugh in that bitter way. Emma hadn't been genuinely sick since she was 5 years old. Her immune system was fine. Better than fine, actually. But she'd learned that playing the fragile card got her whatever she wanted, and my parents never questioned it. So I did what any overlooked kid does. I disappeared into my own world. I spent hours in my room, which became my sanctuary mainly because Emma claimed she was allergic to my lavender candles. It was the one space in that house where I could exist without apology. I dove into books about art history, antique appraisal, gemstones. I studied auction catalogs like other kids studied Instagram. Grandma Rose had ignited something in me with her jewelry collection, and I fed that flame with every book I could get my hands on. You want to know something pathetic? Part of me was grateful when Emma played sick on family occasions. At least at Grandma's house. Someone asked about my day. Someone cared about what I was learning. Someone saw me as more than just a walking petri dish that might contaminate the family's princess. The message was clear by the time I turned 16. Emma was delicate and special and needed protection. I was sturdy and self-sufficient and needed nothing. Emma's achievements, no matter how minor, were celebrations. Mine were expectations at best, inconveniences at worst. They'd rewritten our family history to justify it all. Sophie's always been so independent, Mom would tell people. She doesn't need as much attention as Emma. She understands her sister is special. No, I didn't understand. I was a child who couldn't figure out why being healthy made me less worthy of love. But you know what? That neglect taught me something valuable. When no one's watching your failures, no one's limiting your successes either. High school was my launch pad, though nobody knew it at the time. While Emma was building her empire of drama, and I mean that literally, she was the self-proclaimed queen of the theater department. Despite never landing a lead role, I was methodically constructing my escape route. My bedroom looked like a command center for overachievement. Color-coded schedules, goal lists broken down by month, week, and day. Emma used to mock me, calling me Rain Man after she saw my organization system. Who needs that many highlighters? She'd laugh. Mom would chuckle along, adding, Sophie's always been a bit intense about things. Intense. That's what they called it when I cared about something that wasn't Emma. But here's the thing about being invisible. Nobody monitors your movements. While they were focused on Emma's latest crisis, her junior year alone featured a breakup that nearly killed her, a friendship ending that was worse than death, and a B+ that was going to ruin her entire future. I was building a resume that would make Ivy League admissions officers weep. Debate team captain, National Honor Society president, editor of the yearbook, 4 years of varsity track, not because I loved running, but because practice was before school, which meant I had an excuse to leave the house early and stay at the library until dinner. The debate team saved my sanity. There's something intoxicating about dismantling someone's argument with pure logic and facts. It also taught me to read people, to spot weaknesses in their reasoning, to know exactly when to push and when to hold back. Skills that would matter more than I could have imagined. I worked at the Bookmark, our local independent bookstore, 20 hours a week. The owner, Mrs. Chen, became one of my secret champions. She'd special order art history books for me and let me use her employee discount. She wrote one of my college recommendation letters, and I'm pretty sure she cried when I read it. It was the first time an adult had put in writing that I was remarkable. Then came the SAT. I studied for that test like my life depended on it, because it did. Every morning at 5 a.m., I was at my desk with practice books and flashcards. I took every practice test I could find. I analyzed every wrong answer until I understood not just the right answer, but why the wrong answers were designed to trick me. The day I got my scores, I refreshed that College Board website probably 50 times, convinced their system was glitching. 1600. Perfect. Not really good. Not impressive. Perfect. I printed the score report and walked downstairs, where Mom was helping Emma with her college essays, for schools she'd eventually drop out of, but that's another story. Mom, I got my SAT scores. That's nice, honey, she said, without looking up. Emma's trying to describe her leadership experience. Emma, tell them about the time you organized that car wash. It was for drama club, Emma added, like I cared. We raised like $200. I got a perfect score, I said quietly. Mom finally looked up. Nobody gets perfect scores, Sophie. Don't exaggerate. I set the paper in front of her. She stared at it for maybe 3 seconds before Emma grabbed it. This has to be fake, Emma said. You probably photoshopped it or something. That night at dinner, my perfect CAT score got approximately 30 seconds of discussion before Emma started talking about how stressful her senior year was going to be. Dad suggested I shouldn't mention my score to anyone because it might make Emma feel bad about her 1050. I applied to 17 schools without telling anyone. I wrote my essays at the bookmark after closing, with Mrs. Chen reading drafts and offering feedback. I forged Mom's signature on the forms that needed parental approval, not that she would have refused to sign, she just would have forgotten or been too busy with Emma's applications to community colleges she'd never finish. The acceptances started rolling in March of my senior year. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, MIT. Each one came with scholarship offers, full rides, or close to it. I kept them all in a lockbox under my bed, knowing what would happen if Emma found them. They'd become about her somehow. How my success made her feel inferior. How I was showing off by applying to schools she couldn't get into. The day Northwestern offered me a full ride, tuition, room, board, books, even a laptop and meal plan, I sat in my car in the school parking lot and sobbed for 20 minutes. Not sad tears. Relief, pure, overwhelming relief. I was getting out. When I finally told my parents I was going to Northwestern, the dinner conversation went like this. Northwestern? In Chicago? That's so far, Sophie. What about Emma? What about her? Well, she'll miss you, won't you, Em? Emma, scrolling through her phone. Can I have her room? I need a bigger closet for my theater costumes. Mom, we can't help with tuition, you know. Emma's education is already stretching us thin. It's a full scholarship. Everything's covered. Dad? Everything? Well, that's practical. Practical. My entire future, my escape from their suffocating indifference, was practical. Emma's response still makes my blood boil. Must be nice to be naturally smart. Some of us actually have to work for things. The girl who hadn't turned in a homework assignment on time since middle school. The girl whose idea of working hard was showing up to 3 out of 5 rehearsals. That girl thought I was naturally smart. The summer before college, I worked 60-hour weeks between the bookmark and a second job at a local restaurant. Every dollar went into my escape fund. Mom complained that I was never home to help with Emma's graduation party planning. Emma was somehow graduating despite failing 2 classes senior year, but the school didn't want to hold her back from her future. Mrs. Chen gave me a gift the week before I left for Northwestern, a leather-bound journal and a first edition of The Great Gatsby. For someone who understands what it means to reinvent yourself, she wrote in the inscription. Move-in day at Northwestern. My parents couldn't make it. Emma had a call back for a community theater production of Annie. She was auditioning for the part of an orphan, which felt ironically appropriate since I'd basically been orphaned by their indifference for years. Aunt Patricia drove me instead. She helped me unpack, bought me groceries, and before she left, handed me an envelope. This is from your Grandma Rose, she said. She wanted you to have it for college. Inside was $1,000 in cash and a note for the girl who sees beauty in forgotten things. Love, Grandma. That first night in my dorm room, 18 years old and finally free, I made myself a promise. I was going to build something so beautiful, so successful, so undeniably mine, that being invisible would become impossible. Not for revenge, not to prove them wrong, but for that 8-year-old girl who got sent away for sneezing. She deserved to be seen, even if I had to be the one to see her. College was everything I dreamed it would be, and more. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who valued intelligence, ambition, drive. Nobody at Northwestern knew I had a sister. Nobody knew about the years of being the family afterthought. I was just Sophie, blank slate, ready to be written. I threw myself into everything. Art history major with a business minor, internships at the Art Institute of Chicago, weekend trips to estate sales in wealthy North Shore suburbs, training my eye to spot value in things others overlooked. Funny how that skill translated. I'd been overlooked my whole life and I'd turned out to be quite valuable. My junior year, I got an internship at Wickham and Associates, a high-end auction house in Chicago. Not the most prestigious, that would be Christie's or Sotheby's, but legitimate enough to matter. They put me in the estates department, cataloging dead people's possessions. Glamorous, right? But that's where everything changed. There was this estate in Winnetka, Mrs. Adelaine Rothschild, 93 years old, no children, and a house that looked like a museum time forgot. The senior assessors had already been through, pulling out the obvious valuable pieces, the Mones, the Tiffany lamps, the first edition books. They left me to catalog what they called the costume jewelry and miscellaneous items. 3 rooms of what everyone assumed was worthless junk. I was sitting on Mrs. Rothschild's bedroom floor, surrounded by dozens of jewelry boxes, when I found it, a brooch that everyone had dismissed as costume. But something about it called to me. The weight was wrong for paste, the clasp mechanism was too complex for a reproduction, the metalwork was too fine. I spent my entire lunch break researching, then stayed at the office until midnight diving into databases. By 2 a.m., I was certain this wasn't costume jewelry. This was a piece from Cartier's 1925 private collection, one of only 12 made for European royalty. The next morning, I presented my findings to Mr. Wickham himself, 22 years old, intern barely making minimum wage, telling the owner of the company that his senior assessors had missed something worth potentially hundreds of thousands. He could have fired me. Instead, he listened. The brooch sold at auction for $327,000. After that, Wickham started requesting me specifically for estates. I had what he called the eye, the ability to see treasure where others saw trash. By the time I graduated, I had a standing job offer and a reputation that was starting to spread through Chicago's antique community. But here's the thing, working for someone else was never the plan. I spent 2 years at Wickham and Associates after graduation, learning everything I could, how to authenticate, how to network, how to build relationships with collectors, how to spot a fake from across a room, how to handle clients who had more money than sense, and clients who had more sense than money. All the while, I was building my own contact list. Every collector I met, every dealer I worked with, every estate lawyer who passed through, I remembered them all. I sent holiday cards. I remembered their kids' names. I built relationships the way my family never built them with me, with consistency, attention, and genuine care. If you're still watching and you've ever felt like you were building something in secret, something nobody else believed in, hit that like button. I need to know I'm not alone in this. The turning point came when I was 25, the Harrington estate, old Chicago money, the kind that traced back to the railroads. The family was fighting over the inheritance, and they wanted everything liquidated fast. Wickham put me in charge of the jewelry assessment. Hidden in a safety deposit box that hadn't been opened in 40 years, I found something extraordinary. A complete parure, matching necklace, earrings, bracelet, and ring from Marie Antoinette's personal collection. The family had no idea what they had. The documentation was all there. The provenance was perfect, but it had been forgotten for decades. That set sold for $4.2 million. My commission was substantial, but more importantly, it made me realize something: I was making millions for Wickham while taking home pennies on the dollar. I had the eye, the connections, the reputation. What I didn't have was my own company. So I did what any rational person would do. I quit. Just kidding. I'm not that impulsive. I spent 6 months planning. I saved every penny. I took on private authentication jobs on the side. I built a business plan that would have made my MBA professors weep with joy if I'd had MBA professors. But who needs Harvard Business School when you have YouTube and determination? The name came to me one night while I was looking through Grandma Rose's old jewelry, the pieces she'd left me when she passed during my senior year of college. Morrison Authentication Services. Simple, professional, mine. I started small, really small, a one-room office in Pilsen, above a Thai restaurant. The smell of pad Thai at all hours sounds romantic until you're trying to impress a client who's considering trusting you with their $1 million collection. But rent was $500 a month, and that's what I could afford. My first client was Mrs. Chen from the Bookmark. Not for authentication, she didn't have any valuable jewelry, but she spread the word to every customer who walked through her door that Sophie Morrison, that lovely girl who used to work there, had started her own authentication business. The first 6 months were terrifying. I ate ramen noodles for dinner and anxiety for breakfast. I took any job that came my way: $50 to authenticate a grandmother's ring, $100 to assess a small estate. I was barely surviving, but I was surviving on my own terms. Then came the Whitfield collection. Mrs. Whitfield was old Chicago society, the kind of woman who had lunch at the Drake Hotel every Wednesday and knew everybody's grandmother. She'd heard about me through Mrs. Chen's network and wanted her entire collection authenticated for insurance purposes. Halfway through cataloging her pieces, I found it a necklace she'd bought at an estate sale 30 years ago for $500, thinking it was a pretty reproduction. It was a genuine Lalique, worth $180,000. Mrs. Whitfield was so thrilled, she not only paid my fee, but insisted on introducing me to her entire social circle. Suddenly, I had a waiting list. Year 2, I hired my first employee, Jessica, a recent gemology graduate who reminded me of myself, brilliant but overlooked because she didn't fit the typical mold. Year 3, we moved to a real office in the Loop, 15th floor, lake views, the works. Year 4, opened a second office in Milwaukee. Year 5, New York City. By year 6, Morrison Authentication Services was the go-to firm for private collectors in the Midwest. We had a reputation for discretion, accuracy, and finding value where others missed it. The girl who'd been invisible her whole life had built a company on seeing what others couldn't. The money followed. Not all at once, but in waves. First thousands, then hundreds of thousands, then millions. I invested wisely: real estate, stocks, some carefully chosen art pieces. I lived well below my means, driving a Honda Accord and living in a nice but modest condo in Lincoln Park. Because here's what growing up invisible teaches you: money isn't for showing off. It's for security. It's for freedom. It's for never having to depend on people who've proven they won't be there for you. Meanwhile, back in Cedar Rapids, my family thought I was working at a little antique shop, barely scraping by. I let them think that. Why? Because every time I'd achieved something in the past, it had been dismissed or diminished. Why would this be different? I still went home for holidays, sitting at that dinner table while Mom fawned over Emma's latest career change. She'd been a makeup artist, a yoga instructor, a life coach, and was currently trying to be an influencer with 342 Instagram followers. Sophie's still playing with old jewelry, Mom would tell relatives, a note of pity in her voice. But she seems happy, I suppose. Happy. I owned a company worth $12 million, had authenticated pieces for celebrities and royalty, and had been featured in trade publications they'd never heard of. But sure, I was happy, I suppose. The guilt started creeping in around year 4 of my business. Not guilt about my success. I'd earned every penny through 16-hour days and expertise I'd spent years developing. The guilt was about my parents. During one of my obligatory Sunday dinners in Cedar Rapids, I noticed things. The roof had a tarp on it. Dad's car made a grinding noise when it started. Mom kept mentioning how expensive Emma's latest career pivot was. She'd decided to become a certified wellness coach, which apparently required $15,000 worth of training from some online guru. That night, Emma cornered me in the kitchen. "Must be nice," she said, loading the dishwasher with the energy of someone who'd been personally victimized by dishes. "What must be nice? Not having any real responsibilities. Living in your little apartment, working at your little shop. No pressure to actually make something of yourself." I almost laughed. My little apartment was a 2-bedroom condo with a view of Lake Michigan. My little shop had just authenticated a collection worth more than our parents' house. "Yeah," I said. "No pressure at all." That's when Mom walked in, tears in her eyes. "Girls, I didn't want to say anything during dinner, but your father and I might have to sell the house. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage." Emma immediately launched into how this was affecting her. Where would she stay when she visited? What about all her stuff in her room? She was storing her wellness coach supplies there. I went home that night and did something I probably shouldn't have. I set up an anonymous bank transfer, $5,000 a month, from a distant relative's estate that my parents had apparently forgotten about. The lawyer, me, using a voice modulator and a fake email, explained that Great Aunt Mildred, completely fictional, had left a trust specifically for them. The relief in Mom's voice when she called to tell me about the windfall was worth the lie. "Can you believe it, Sophie? Right when we needed it most." Emma says it's the universe responding to her manifestation practice. Of course she did. The money helped, but it also enabled. Emma quit her part-time job because the family was financially stable now. She started taking trips to networking events, aka Instagram-worthy vacations for her wellness coaching business that had zero clients. She bought designer bags that she claimed were investments in her personal brand. Meanwhile, I wore Target to family dinners, drove a rental car when I visited, couldn't show up in my BMW, and listened to them talk about how brave Emma was for following her passion while I was stuck in that dusty antique shop. The cruel irony? I was literally funding Emma's delusions. By year 5, I was sending them $7,000 a month. Dad's medical bills from a minor heart procedure. Emma's third attempt at college, this time for a marketing degree she'd never finish. Mom's back surgery. Emma's emergency root canal that was somehow my parents' responsibility, despite her being 28 years old. During this period, I authenticated a necklace that belonged to actual royalty. I'm talking certified, documented, worn to a coronation royalty. My fee for that single authentication was more than my parents had earned in 5 years. That same week, Mom called to ask if I could skip Christmas presents, because money's tight for everyone right now, and we want to make sure Emma can afford her wellness retreat in Sedona. I said, sure, no problem. Then I increased their anonymous monthly transfer to cover Emma's retreat. The mental gymnastics were exhausting. I'd sit in board meetings for my company with 20 employees and offices in 3 cities, then drive to Cedar Rapids and pretend to be poor Sophie, the family disappointment who worked retail. Want to hear something pathetic? Part of me kept hoping they'd figure it out, that they'd Google my name and find the interviews I'd done in trade magazines, that they'd wonder how I could afford to help them, even though they thought I was only sending $1,000 a month, that they'd be curious enough about my life to ask meaningful questions. They never did. Emma started a YouTube channel around this time, Living My Best Life with Emma. She had maybe 40 views per video, most of which I'm pretty sure were me checking to make sure she wasn't mentioning me. In one video, she talked about how hard it was being the successful sibling. My sister Sophie, bless her heart, she tries so hard, but some people just aren't meant for big things, you know? I try to inspire her, but you can't help someone who won't help themselves. 43 views. I was view number 44. The authentication that changed everything came in year 6. A private collector in Dubai had a piece that museums had been trying to acquire for decades. They wanted absolute discretion and were willing to pay for it. The authentication fee alone was $1.3 million. I sat in my office that night, looking at the wire transfer confirmation, and realized something: I had more money than I could spend in a lifetime. I had success beyond my wildest dreams. I had everything except the one thing I'd wanted since I was 8 years old, my family's recognition that I mattered. But here's what therapy teaches you. Yes, successful people need therapy too. You can't buy what was never for sale. My family's love and attention weren't available at any price. They were reserved exclusively for Emma, and no amount of money would change that. So I kept the secret. I kept sending the anonymous transfers. I kept showing up to dinners in my Target sweaters, listening to Emma talk about her latest failure disguised as a journey, watching my parents nod along like she was delivering a TED Talk. Sophie, you're so quiet, Mom would say. Emma's telling us about her vision board workshop. Just listening, I'd reply, calculating the hourly rate I'd just earned, authenticating a piece worth more than Emma would see in her lifetime. The universe has a sense of humor, though, because while I was keeping my success a secret, Emma was planning something that would blow everything wide open. She just didn't know it yet. The call came 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Sophie, honey, I need your help. Mom's voice had that particular strain that meant Emma had created another situation requiring family resources. What's wrong? It's my back. The doctor says I need surgery right after Thanksgiving, and I just can't manage cooking for everyone. You know how Emma is with cooking. Translation: Emma once burned water and considered ordering takeout a form of meal prep. Could you maybe help with some dishes? I should have just offered to cook, but I was tired. Tired of pretending to be poor, tired of Target sweaters, tired of rental cars, tired of hiding my success like it was something shameful. I'll handle the whole meal, I heard myself say. Don't worry about anything. Oh, Sophie, we can't afford. It's covered. Just show up and eat. I hired Chicago's premier catering company, the same one I used for company events. They handled everything: setup, service, cleanup. The menu was sophisticated, but not pretentious. Think elevated comfort food, turkey that actually had moisture, sides that complemented each other, desserts that would make you weep with joy. It cost more than my parents' monthly mortgage. I didn't care. Thanksgiving morning, I woke up in my childhood bedroom. Mom insisted I stay over the night before to help with preparations. The room hadn't changed since high school, same lavender walls. Emma had declared, gave her migraines, so she never entered. Same desk where I'd studied for the SATs. Same view of the backyard where I'd been told to play quietly so Emma could nap. I checked my phone. The Hong Kong auction was happening that evening, a Qing dynasty necklace my client was desperate to acquire. If they won, the authentication fee would be $485,000. I needed to monitor the situation. The caterers arrived at noon, transforming my parents' dining room into something from a magazine: real china, actual silver, linen napkins. The works. Emma arrived fashionably late, as always, with her latest boyfriend, a crypto trader named Brad who definitely peaked in high school. Wow, Emma said, surveying the spread. Fancy. Did you rob a bank, Sophie? Something like that. The relatives started arriving: aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole Morrison clan. Everyone complimented the food, the presentation, the elegance. Mom kept trying to take credit, then deflecting to Emma. Emma inspired us to elevate our hosting, she actually said at one point. Emma, who had contributed nothing but complaints about the sweet potatoes being too orange. I excused myself between dinner and dessert to check the auction. My client was winning. The authentication was basically guaranteed. I was literally making $500,000 while my family debated whether the stuffing was better than Mom's usual stovetop. I'd left my laptop open on my childhood desk, figuring I'd check it once more before dessert. The Hong Kong auction site was up, along with several tabs showing recent transactions, my company's quarterly reports, and because I'd been reviewing it that morning, my main business account. That's when Emma walked in without knocking. 31 years old, and she still hadn't learned basic courtesy. Brad's being weird about. She stopped mid-sentence, staring at my screen. I watched her face change as she processed what she was seeing. The company name at the top of the quarterly report, the transaction amounts, the account balance clearly visible in the browser tab. Here's the thing about Emma. She's not stupid. Self-absorbed? Yes. Entitled? Absolutely. But not stupid. She knew exactly what she was looking at. This can't be real. Emma. But she was already grabbing my laptop. That familiar look of triumphant revelation on her face, the same one she'd worn every time she'd successfully gotten me in trouble as kids. Everyone needs to see this. Everyone needs to see this. Right now. She practically ran to the dining room, laptop held high like she was presenting evidence in court. I followed, knowing there was no stopping what was about to happen. 23 relatives, full of gourmet food and expensive wine, all turned to watch Emma's performance. You all need to see what perfect, helpful Sophie has been hiding from us. She turned the laptop around with a flourish that would have been theatrical if it wasn't so genuinely vindictive. The screen showed everything. Morrison Authentication Services, LLC, founder and CEO, current account balance $12.4 million. Recent transaction, $1.2 million, completed. Pending contract, $485,000. Hong Kong, quarterly revenue, $4.2 million. The silence was absolute. You could hear the caterers in the kitchen, carefully staying out of whatever family drama was unfolding. Uncle Pete's fork hit his plate. Aunt Patricia's wineglass stopped halfway to her mouth. Brad, the crypto boyfriend, actually whistled. Mom started laughing. Not regular laughing. That hysterical, disbelieving laugh that sounds like crying. This is a joke. Sophie works at an antique shop. She helps dust things. She makes maybe $30,000 a year. This is Emma. Did you make this? Is this one of your vision board things? Emma's voice was shaking. It's real. Look at it. Look at it. She's been lying to us for years. I stood there, calm, calmer than I'd ever been. Because, you know what? The secret was out. The weight I'd been carrying, that crushing need to hide my success to protect their feelings, was finally gone. I haven't lied about anything, I said quietly. You just never asked. That's when Mom found her voice. Her real voice. The one I recognized from every time Emma had gotten a participation trophy while I was getting actual achievements. $12 million? $12 million? And you let us struggle? I'd been sending you $7,000 a month for 3 years. That was Great Aunt Mildred's trust. There is no Great Aunt Mildred. That was me. It's always been me. The room exploded. Everyone talking at once. Emma crying. Actually crying, real tears for once. About how betrayed she felt. Dad standing up so fast his chair fell over. Cousins pulling out their phones, probably Googling my company. Mom's next words cut the deepest. How could you be so selfish? Your sister has student loans. For degrees she never finished. For schools she dropped out of. For career changes that last 3 months. Emma, through her tears. I deserve to know. I'm your sister. When? When did you deserve to know? When you called me Rain Man for being organized. When you told your 43 YouTube followers that I wasn't meant for big things. When you spent the money I sent mom and dad on designer bags while telling me some people just aren't successful. Dad finally spoke. You owe this family. I owe this family nothing. The words came out louder than I intended. The Caters definitely heard that. I was invisible in this house unless I was a threat to Emma's health. I was sent away for having allergies. Allergies. Every achievement I had was dismissed because it might make Emma feel bad. You didn't come to a single debate tournament, science fair, or honor society induction. But I watched you sit through 3 hours of Emma's middle school production of The Wizard of Oz where she played a tree. That was different, Mom started. You're right, it was. Because Emma mattered and I didn't. So I built something that mattered without you. And you know what? It was easier without you. Without the constant reminders that I was too much, or not enough, or somehow both at the same time. Emma stood up, mascara running down her face. You're going to share that money with this family. It's only fair. Fair? Fair? Was it fair when you got a car for your 16th birthday, and I got a card that said, sorry, money's tight? Was it fair when mom and dad took out loans for your college, but told me to figure it out myself? Was it fair when— Enough, Mom screamed. You have millions, and we're your family. Family shares. Family helps each other. I've been helping, anonymously, consistently, without expecting thanks or recognition. But now that you know I have money, suddenly I'm family? Suddenly I matter? Quick pause. If you've ever been in a situation where family only remembered you existed when they needed something, leave a comment. I need to know I'm not alone in this special kind of hurt. Aunt Patricia, God bless her, tried to be the voice of reason. Maybe everyone should calm down. But Emma wasn't done. I want 2 million, minimum, for all the years you made me feel bad about myself. I actually laughed. I made you feel bad. You were always so perfect. Straight A's, perfect SAT scores, full scholarship. Do you know how hard it was being compared to you? We were never compared. That would require them to acknowledge my achievements. The only time my name came up was when they needed to explain why you shouldn't feel bad about failing. Mom pulled out her phone. I'm calling a lawyer. There must be laws about hiding money from family. Good luck with that. Dad's face was purple. You walk out that door, you're not welcome back. I looked around the room, at the family that had spent 23 years telling me I didn't matter, at the catered Thanksgiving dinner they'd enjoyed while planning how to spend money that wasn't theirs, at Emma, already calculating what she could buy with her imaginary 2 million. I haven't been welcome here since I was 8 years old. You just never said it out loud before. I picked up my laptop, grabbed my purse. Yes, it was Hermes. No, they never noticed, and headed for the door. Mom's parting shot. What kind of daughter keeps secrets like this? I turned back one last time. The kind you raised. The invisible one, remember? Turns out being invisible is a superpower. You can build an empire while everyone's looking the other way. The last thing I heard as I left was Emma screaming about how I'd ruined Thanksgiving and Mom already on the phone with someone, probably every relative she could think of, rallying the troops for what would become the Morrison family war of 2023. My phone started exploding before I even reached my car. Texts, calls, Facebook messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone suddenly remembered I existed now that I had $12 million. I drove home to Chicago that night, crying and laughing in equal measure. The tears weren't for what I'd lost. You can't lose what you never had. They were for the 8-year-old girl who just wanted her parents to care about her science fair project. She deserved better. But the laughter? That was for the 31-year-old woman who'd built something extraordinary while her family wasn't watching. She'd gotten exactly what she deserved. The 48 hours after Thanksgiving were like watching a wildfire spread through social media and family phone trees. Emma, in true Emma fashion, took to every platform she had: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, that dead YouTube channel. She painted herself as the victim of a cruel sister who'd watched her struggle while sitting on millions. The narrative was impressive in its delusion. I had stolen opportunities from her, sabotaged her success with my secret wealth, and my personal favorite, created a toxic environment of false scarcity. She actually used the phrase financial gaslighting. I don't think she knows what any of those words mean. The Facebook post went semi-viral in our hometown. 1,247 shares. Comment sections full of people who hadn't spoken to me since high school suddenly having opinions about my character. She always seems stuck up, wrote Ashley Parker, who borrowed my notes for 4 years and never said thank you. But here's what Emma didn't expect: receipts. Mrs. Chen from the bookmark? She commented on every single post. Sophie worked 60-hour weeks while in high school to save for college. Where were you, Emma? My former debate coach chimed in. Funny how Sophie's parents never attended a single tournament where she won state championships. But sure, tell me more about how unsupportive she's being. Jessica, my first employee, went nuclear. Your sister gave me a job when no one else would. She's put 12 kids through college with scholarships from her company. What have you done besides fail upward? The narrative started shifting. Then came the family flying monkeys. The relatives dispatched to guilt me into submission. Uncle Pete called first. Sophie, sweetheart, your mother is devastated, absolutely devastated. She hasn't eaten in 2 days. She seemed to have a healthy appetite when she was planning how to spend my money. Aunt Susan texted, family is everything. You only get one mother. I texted back, thank God for small miracles. Cousin Marcus, who I hadn't heard from in 5 years, sent a long email about how blessed I was and how blessings should be shared with those less fortunate. He conveniently forgot he owns 3 rental properties and a boat. The most ridiculous attempt came from Emma's boyfriend Brad, the crypto guy. He actually had the audacity to send me a business proposal for a revolutionary authentication app that would disrupt the traditional authentication paradigm. He wanted a modest investment of $3 million. I responded with a single word, no. He replied, your loss. Have fun being stuck in the past while I change the future? Sure, Brad. Sure. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad escalated to threats. They showed up at my office building in Chicago. Security called me from the lobby. Miss Morrison, there's an older couple here claiming to be your parents. I watched them on the security monitor. Mom was crying, Dad was yelling at the security guard, and because, of course, Emma was there too, filming everything on her phone for content. They're not on the approved list. Please have them removed. But we're her parents. I could hear Mom screaming through the phone. I had security give them a message. Miss Morrison says to communicate through lawyers if necessary. That's when they really lost it. Dad started threatening to sue me for emotional distress. Mom claimed I was mentally unstable and needed intervention. Emma posted the whole thing on TikTok with the caption, millionaire sister has security remove own parents. So sad. Link in bio for my GoFundMe. Yes, she started a GoFundMe. Help Emma Morrison rebuild after family betrayal. Her goal was $50,000. She raised $127. The legal threats were my favorite part. Mom actually paid a lawyer $500, probably from my anonymous transfers, to send me a letter demanding my fair share of the family assets. The lawyer seemed embarrassed to be sending it. The letter basically said that because I'd been successful while living under their roof until age 18, they were entitled to a portion of my company. My lawyer's response was a work of art. She detailed every scholarship I'd earned, every loan I'd taken out, every hour I'd worked to build my company after leaving their house. Then she added a little note about how we could countersue for the therapy bills I'd accumulated from childhood emotional neglect. They dropped it. But the real kicker came 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. Emma did a live stream, Healing from Toxic Wealth Hoarding, where she claimed I'd promised her money for years and then reneged. She actually said, with a straight face, that I'd been financially abusing her by being secretly wealthy. Someone in the comments asked, why do you think you're entitled to your sister's money? Emma's response, because she wouldn't have any of it without our family's support. The comment section exploded. People started pulling receipts I didn't even know existed. Someone found my parents' old Facebook posts, years of them talking about Emma's achievements while never mentioning me. Someone else found Emma's old tweets making fun of people who work in retail when she thought I worked at an antique shop. My personal favorite was when someone found the newspaper article about my perfect SAT score. My parents had never posted about it, but the local paper had run a story. In the same week, social media, Mom had posted 17 times about Emma making the JV cheerleading squad. The narrative was crumbling, and Emma couldn't handle it. She tried one last desperate move. She contacted a trashy podcast that specialized in family drama and told them her story. They invited her on, probably expecting easy content. They also fact-checked her. The podcast host pulled up my company's public records, the authentication work we'd done for museums, the scholarships we'd funded. Then he asked Emma a simple question: "What have you achieved professionally?" Emma's answer was a 5-minute word salad about journey work and creative exploration and finding her authentic self. The host's follow-up: "So nothing?" The podcast episode was entitled Sister Thinks She Deserves Millions for Existing. It has 2.3 million views. Emma tried to sue the podcast. She represented herself. It went about as well as you'd expect. During all this drama, you know who reached out with actual support? Grandma Rose's friends from her retirement community. These 90-year-old women who barely knew me sent cards saying things like, "Rose always said you were the special one, and she'd be so proud of what you've built." One of them, Mrs. Goldstein, even wrote, "Your grandmother knew your parents were idiots." We all did. The whole bridge club talked about it. That made me laugh for the first time in weeks. 3 months after Thanksgiving, I got a call from Aunt Patricia. She'd been Switzerland through the whole drama, not taking sides, but not attacking me either. "They're losing the house," she said simply. "They were losing the house before. That's why I was sending them money. Emma convinced them to stop paying the mortgage because she was sure you'd cave and give them millions. That's incredibly stupid." Yes, well, your parents aren't known for their financial wisdom. She was right. They'd raised Emma to believe the universe would provide if she just manifested hard enough. They'd raised me to believe I had to work for everything twice as hard to be worth half as much. Ironically, both lessons had led us to exactly where we were. "Are you going to help them?" Patricia asked. "Would they learn anything if I did?" No. Then no. The house went into foreclosure 2 months later. Mom and Dad moved in with Emma, who was living in a one-bedroom apartment with Brad, the crypto boyfriend. Last I heard, she was selling essential oils and calling herself a wellness entrepreneur. It's been a year since that Thanksgiving. A year since my family discovered I wasn't the failure they'd always assumed I was. Morrison Authentication Services just opened our 5th office, this one in Los Angeles. We're the go-to firm for private collectors on both coasts now. That Hong Kong auction I was monitoring during Thanksgiving? My client won. The authentication fee paid for a new scholarship program I started, specifically for kids who are overlooked in their families. I haven't spoken to my parents or Emma since that day. They've tried, of course. The attempts come in waves, usually correlating with their financial situations. When the foreclosure went through, Mom sent a letter saying she forgave me for abandoning the family. I didn't respond. When Emma and Brad broke up, he left her for someone with actual crypto investments. She texted saying we should heal together as sisters. I blocked her number. When Dad had a minor heart procedure, Uncle Pete called to say I should visit because you'll regret it if something happens. I sent flowers to the hospital with no card. The extended family is split. Some think I'm heartless. Others think I'm a hero. Most are just jealous. Cousin Marcus still sends business proposals quarterly. Aunt Susan posts passive-aggressive quotes about forgiveness on Facebook. Uncle Pete stopped talking to me entirely after I refused to invest in his food truck idea, but here's the beautiful thing. I don't care. For 23 years, I made myself smaller to fit into their narrative. I dimmed my light so Emma's could shine brighter. I accepted scraps of attention and called it love. Now, I live in a penthouse apartment with a view of Lake Michigan. I run a company that employs 37 people. I date someone who celebrates my achievements instead of being threatened by them. I have a therapist who's helped me understand that family isn't just blood, it's the people who show up for you. Mrs. Chen from the Bookmark? She comes to Chicago quarterly, and we have tea at the Drake. She's more of a mother to me than my actual mother ever was. Jessica, my first employee? She's now my COO and my best friend. She was my maid of honor at my wedding, the one my family wasn't invited to. Those 90-year-old ladies from Grandma Rose's Bridge Club? They've adopted me as their collective granddaughter. I authenticate their jewelry for free, and they tell me stories about my grandmother that my parents never knew. This is my family now. The one I chose, the one that chose me back. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Emma hadn't found my laptop that day. Would I still be playing small? Still sending anonymous transfers? Still showing up to dinners where I was invisible? Or would I have eventually broken free anyway? I think Grandma Rose knew. That's why she gave me her jewelry collection. Not the valuable pieces, just the costume ones. But she knew I'd see the beauty in things others overlooked. She knew I'd understand that sometimes the most precious things are the ones people dismiss. In her will, she left me a note I didn't find until after Thanksgiving, tucked inside an old jewelry box. My dear Sophie, you were never invisible to me. Build something beautiful. Love, Grandma. So I did. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for seeing me, really seeing me, in a way my family never could.